Welcome to Module 4. It is recommended that you complete the modules in sequential order. Thus, if you have not watched Modules 1, 2, and 3, please access those modules on the Principal Partnership Project Google site before continuing. The preceding 3 modules will provide the necessary overview and knowledge needed to engage in the meaningful learning and application that is intended in Module 4. In this module, you will access the electronic version of the Kentucky PSEL Guidance for Growth and Evaluation tool and closely examine PSEL Standard 6. Using an intentional standards deconstruction process, the module will provide reflective questions that promote district calibration and personalization of the Kentucky PSEL Guidance for Growth and Evaluation tool. While this module focuses solely on Standard 6, it is highly recommended that districts and schools utilize the process to facilitate additional learning sessions that promote consensus understanding of standards, as well as district and school implementation expectations. Notice the image of the National Professional Standards for Educational Leaders cover page. This is definitely a document that you will want to be able to access quickly. This is a screenshot from the National PSEL document. With this view, you can see the standards title, standard statement, and all of the elements. While this screenshot does provide a nice one-page overview of the standard, through this module, we will delve much deeper into the printed text. The goal of this professional learning session is to model a process for deconstructing the professional standards for educational leaders to support meaningful implementation of the district's certified evaluation plan and the continuous personal and professional growth of school leaders. Using an analytical review format, there are identified times during this session that you will pause and engage in district discussion and planning. Please note the icon that designates when to pause the module. Timing and grouping for allocated discussion is at your discretion. Additionally, you may choose to utilize the professional learning resources for Module 4 before beginning the collaborative learning session. To access the Kentucky PSEL Guidance for Growth and Evaluation tool, as well as Module 4 discussion questions, go to the Principal Partnership Project Google site and click on PSEL Modules. Then scroll down to Module 4. Now, let's begin our analytical review of PSEL. As mentioned, Standard 6 will be used to model the deconstruction process. The title of Standard 6 is Professional Capacity of School Personnel. The standard statement reads, effective educational leaders develop the professional capacity and practice of school personnel to promote each student's academic success and well-being. As explained in an earlier module, the Kentucky PSEL Guidance for Growth and Evaluation tool includes critical attributes. Remember, the Kentucky design team identified the big ideas from the standard and elements to develop the critical attributes. The critical attributes are basically a synthesized statement that encompasses overlapping ideas from elements. For Standard 6, there are 6 critical attributes and 9 elements. Let's examine the first critical attribute from Standard 6. The school leader develops explicit criteria to recruit, hire, support, develop, and retain staff, and proactively plans for staff turnover and succession, and ensures induction and mentoring systems are valuable and increase effectiveness. Notice the elements that are correlated to critical attribute number 1, A, B, and G. It is essential to note that the identified connection of elements A, B, and G to critical attribute number 1 is the primary alignment. Certainly, a case could be made that other elements also align to critical attribute number 1. Without a doubt, there is much overlap that is apparent as the elements and attributes are reviewed. However, keep in mind that the identified correlation is the primary alignment, the most obvious connections. Once again, let's review the first critical attribute from Standard 6. Please read the critical attribute silently. Notice elements A, B, and G are embedded into critical attribute number 1. Now, let's explore the progression view of the identified elements. For each of the elements noted, there is descriptive language that provides clarity regarding performance at each independent level. As referenced in a previous module, the performance goal for school leaders is accomplished, the green column. The language in the accomplished level is the exact language, verbatim, from the National PSEL document. As accomplished is the goal, it is imperative that the intent of the standard expectation is deeply understood and agreed upon to support clearly defined professional responsibilities. Therefore, it is vital to allocate collective work time to achieve cohesive understanding, shared language, and actionable performance expectations that reflect calibrated district and school convictions. As a means to support this collective learning need, we will model an analytical process that could be emulated for any PSEL standard. To begin, let's analyze element A. Take a moment to read the Go language for element A. Now, let's do a second read of the element. Silently reread the Go language and think critically about the text. How do you interpret this element? What are important words embedded in this element? What can you conclude initially about this element? Take some more quiet time to process. Now that you've had your think time, let's make meaning of this element. We will do a close read of this text and use a strategy called annotation to support an analytical breakdown of the element. To begin, the opening text clues us in to 5 essential actions: recruits, hires, supports, develops, and retains. So the school leader is responsible for those specific actions. Now, the question is recruit, hire, support, develop, and retain who? There are 2 groups referenced in the element: teachers and other professional staff. As well, there is clarity given as to characteristics of these 2 groups. Qualifying descriptions are provided. The teachers and other professional staff must be effective and caring. Then, a close examination of the text draws our attention to the word "and." In addition to recruiting, hiring, supporting, developing, and retaining effective and caring teachers and other professional staff, The connecting word "and" indicates there is an additional layer of expectation embedded into this element. The school leader is also expected to form the two identified groups into an educationally effective faculty. Clearly, the secondary layer of expectation increases the depth and complexity of this element. There is a critical lift identified when the school leader has the responsibility of creating a culture of collective efficacy that embraces a team mentality instead of isolated individuals working diligently behind closed classroom doors. In thinking about the knowledge and skills needed for one to master this element's expectation, it is pretty extensive. For example, there is a specific reference to ensuring teachers and other professional staff are effective and caring. Let's examine effective. Consider these questions as you reflect on the word. What knowledge might a school leader need to ensure the two groups explicitly referenced are effective? How might having a strong handle on the criteria for success for these two groups be especially useful for the school leader? According to 704 KAR 3:370, the criteria is mandated. Thus, the standard for success is already identified. The regulation names the evidence source that provides description and indicators of effectiveness. Therefore, an obvious knowledge need is an extensive understanding of the standards for both groups. Let's think about this. For teachers, it is essential the school leader has a strong grasp of the Kentucky Framework for Teaching to successfully support high levels of teacher effectiveness. For other professional staff, that phrase is quite broad. Other professionals in your building might include library and media specialist, guidance counselor, or even a school therapist. Each of those specific role groups has mandated criteria. For example, the school library and media specialist has specific library and media standards that are included in the Kentucky Specialist Framework. An accomplished school leader must have expertise in the role-specific specialist frameworks to be capable of facilitating high levels of growth and effectiveness in other professionals. Another significant knowledge requirement is strategies. To support attainment of this goal, knowing intentional and impactful strategies to support the action required in this element will be a positive addition to the leader's skill set. For instance, purposeful strategies targeted to support recruitment efforts would be a core knowledge expectation for this element. In terms of skill, what skills might a school leader need to possess in order to perform at the accomplished level? Certainly, the skill of collaboration is one of the primary competencies embedded in this element. To form independent groups into an educationally effective faculty, that is going to require masterful collaboration skills. Having stellar collaboration skills will assist in the building of a culture designed to increase collective teacher efficacy while utilizing teacher leadership as a lever. Just as the team mentality is highlighted in this element, a team approach is also crucial to enhance leadership practices for all school leaders in the district. Working as a team by facilitating calibrating conversations that create unity in meaning and application of standards is a pivotal method to support leadership growth and ensure school and student success. With that said, it is now team time. Pause the video. You may also access the Questions to Consider handout to capture your thinking. Let's have some internal conversation. Review the 4 questions and probe to develop district agreements regarding meaning and expectation. Think innovatively as you discuss the 4 questions. Push your colleagues to consider how might present action be enhanced. When you are ready, advance the video. Just as knowledge and skills enhance a school leader's understanding of details associated with each responsibility an accomplished leader is charged with executing, a conceptualized view of the element is vital for improving practice. A way to internalize a standard element is to bring it to life. Thus, we have the question, what might this look like in practice? In the Kentucky PSEL Guidance for Growth and Evaluation tool, there is a possible examples section included. The possible examples are intended to showcase the element in everyday practice. As you review the possible examples section of the tool, please remember the section is not intended to be a complete list, but instead a list that stimulates discussion in the district. The possible examples are designed to probe thinking about how the elements might look in practice. In the possible examples, you will see some ways evidence might be collected to support school leaders reaching the various performance levels. It is important to emphasize that you will sometimes see Kentucky-specific examples of artifacts referenced in the possible examples. The inclusion of artifacts in the possible examples section is to magnify how the artifact is being used. The how is critical to performance level. You might even see the same artifact referenced in a variety of different performance levels. It should be visibly clear that how the artifact is used is connected to the performance level. As we have extensively discussed element A, meaning and expectation are clear. Now let's connect element A to authentic examples of leadership practice. The element mandates the school leader focuses on retention efforts. How might evidence be captured to verify a focus on retention is resulting in positive outcomes? One such way is the use of a stay survey that is given to faculty to gauge why the employees stay and what could trigger them to leave. According to this accomplished possible example, it is not just administering a stay survey, but it also requires analyzing the results to inform improved retention efforts. It is not simply about using a survey. It is much deeper than simple usage. There is correlated action in response to feedback. The second possible example connects to the embedded requirement of effectiveness. How might a school leader increase levels of effectiveness in teachers and other professional staff? One such way is to use a focused process such as the Danielson Collaborative Observation Process to support growth and improvement of all. Certainly, this process is not the only process a school could use. The difference maker is having an identified process that is research-based and works for the specific school and/or district. Lastly, we have a possible example that references some specific peer observation strategies, like pineapple charts and #ObserveMe. These are specific activities, if implemented with fidelity, that the school leader facilitates to build an accountable, collaborative culture for growth and improvement. As such, the element's end goal is the creation of an educationally effective faculty. To bring individual teachers together, teachers are the key ingredient. If done well, peer observation strategies promote partnerships and collegial connections that contribute to the fruition of a faculty, a collective group sharing mutual accountability, a team. Hopefully, the provided possible examples prompted your thinking regarding element A in action. Thus, your task is to discuss how element A might be conceptualized in specific leadership practices that most appropriately align to your district's work. Notice the question in the dark blue box. This is a question to consider as you plan. What actions are visible in your school and/or district that might align to the expectation of this element? Let's have some collegial conversation. Pause the video. Please review the 4 questions and probe to develop district goals and expectations for performance. Think innovatively as you progress through the 4 questions. When you are ready, resume the video. Based on your district discussion, what might be some possible examples that need to be added to the tool to most appropriately reflect district consensus? Your district can personalize the possible examples to support prioritized work of the district and/or new expectations that need magnified. The process to personalize the tool is relatively simple. Click on the cell that you want to add an example. Go to the menu bar and click Insert. Choose Cells and shift down, and a blank cell will appear. The insertion process is the same each time you want to add a personalized possible example. At this time, we'll pause the video and allow you to add some personalized examples. Now, let's take a close look at element B. Once again, you see the first critical attribute and element connections. We will begin by comparing element B to element A. At first glance, it may appear element B is strikingly similar to element A. Certainly, there are connections, but there are also distinctions. Take a few minutes to turn and talk to a partner about the connections and distinctions. Pause the module to allow for some partner talk time. Both A and B are focused on effective faculty and staff, whether it be in regard to getting, keeping, or dealing with expected turnover. In element A, there is the requirement of providing professional support to develop and enhance effectiveness. In element B, there is a specific strategy mentioned to do just that. Induction and mentoring of new personnel is a huge component of element B. As well, there is some new language in element B that needs corroborated for meaning. For example, succession, induction, mentoring, and even new. Let's go a bit deeper with element B. There are 2 strong verbs in the opening of the element: plans and manages. The school leader plans for and manages staff turnover. Consider the following questions. How is the skill set required in element B different from the skill set needed in element A? Also, think about the phrase manages staff turnover in succession. What does that mean? One way to help us understand the content within the elements is to utilize the progressions to deduce meaning. Notice the words circled in red. In the developing performance level, reacts is a key word that helps us infer meaning and characteristics of planning and management. So, at the developing level, a school leader reacts to turnover in succession instead of planning for it. In the exemplary performance level, proactively, strategic, and stakeholder capacity all stand out as context clues to discern effective planning and management. The idea of being proactive instead of reactive is pivotal when determining performance level. Highly effective planning and management would also entail strategic efforts that embed a shared leadership model. The next question asks us to consider meaning relative to the term succession. If a school managed staff turnover and succession well, what would that look like? It might possibly be reflected by minimal disruption and a smooth transition when a new teacher takes over for a retiring teacher, for instance. Meaning is also expanded when possible examples that correlate to element B are examined. The first possible example is about using grow your own initiatives to showcase planning ahead to fill vacancies before they happen by capitalizing on the talented students within your own school. Planning for a Spanish teacher's retirement that is likely to occur in 5 years by recruiting students who are presently in AP Spanish to join Educators Rising is a proactive measure the school leader could enact as a strategy to plan ahead of time to ensure applicants for the position. Having relationships with entities who have an interest in education is a solid strategy to support planning and management of staff turnover and succession. Consistently communicating with the Retired Teachers Association about future vacancies and needs is a long-term measure that prepares those who care deeply about the profession to have ample time to investigate and recruit alongside school leadership. Lastly, Element B emphasizes the necessity of having effective induction and mentoring of new personnel. An accomplished leader must know what funding source can support this important learning network. The provided possible example highlights how Title II, Part A, can be used strategically for innovative and highly effective support programs for new personnel. Now that we have lifted language to help us deconstruct meaning and reviewed some possible examples of practice, the next step is to have district calibrating conversations to ensure all members of your team are on the same page. Pause the video. Consider the 5 questions. When you are ready, resume the video. Based on your district discussion, what might be some possible examples that need to be added to the tool to most appropriately reflect district consensus? Feel free to add those at this time. Pause the module and resume when you are ready. The last element connection to critical attribute number 1 is G. On first glance, there are no words like recruit, retain, or effective. Why might this element be grouped with elements A and B? What connection might be made? Using the gray box and the provided question, take a few minutes to turn and talk with the partner. Pause the video to allow for partner talk time. In the critical attribute, there is the inclusion of the word valuable. How might connecting leadership, both teacher and from other members of the school community, make the work more valuable? Once again, take a few minutes to turn and talk with the partner. Pause the video to allow for partner talk time. Let's deconstruct element G. First off, the action verb is develops. What is the accomplished leader responsible for developing? According to the text, the accomplished leader is responsible for developing the capacity, opportunities, and support for leadership. That leadership is even broken down. It is about teacher leadership and leadership from other members of the school community. Questions to consider. What skills and knowledge are needed to reach the intent of the standard? What might this look like in practice? Let's review some provided possible examples connected to this element. The first 2 possible examples illustrate how teacher leadership might be utilized to showcase the intent of this element relative to the critical attribute. To begin, The master schedule prioritizes a hybrid teaching position that allows a teacher to provide instruction half day and serve as a coach for new teachers the other half of the day. Next, to compensate for KTIP, the school leader spearheads a multi-district project that trains teachers to lead induction programs and support cross-district growth. The last example brings to life leadership from other members of the school community. Student leaders attend job fairs with school administrators and advocate why candidates should choose their school for employment. Now, for some time for your district to converse about actions that are visible in your district and/or school that might align to the expectations in this element and critical attribute. Pause the video and discuss the 4 questions provided. Make sure to capture thinking. Resume the video when ready to move on. Once again, if you desire, take some time to personalize the tool by adding local contributions to the possible examples section. Pause the module. Resume the video when you are ready. As your district continues engaging in an analytical review process, a focus on new expectations within PSEL is a valuable examination lens. Investigating new expectations that are embedded in PSEL as compared to the Kentucky Principal Performance Standards that have previously been required is a necessary learning experience to build the greatest degree of leadership understanding. The identification of all important new expectations in PSEL has somewhat been completed as the Commissioner's Principal Advisory Council has identified examples of language that is new and different in PSEL as compared to the 6 Kentucky Principal Performance Standards. Notice some of the language in blue that the group pulled out. Let's focus on language that is embedded in Standard 6 that we haven't yet discussed. The school leader is charged with promoting work-life balance of faculty and staff, and also accountable for maintaining a healthy personal work-life balance. A review of elements H and I allow us to think more deeply about the topic of work-life balance. At the core of Standard 6 is school personnel. The standard is wrapped around leadership work connected to school personnel. Therefore, having school personnel is the first step. Recognizing the nationwide teacher shortage issue and the fact that burnout is a reported contributing factor influencing educators to leave the profession, the issue of work-life balance is timely and an urgent expectation for school leaders. As it is a new expectation for Kentucky leaders, the possible examples section might provide some guidance regarding work-life balance. Pause the video. Identify and discuss a few possible examples in the tool that connect to work-life balance. Resume the video when ready. Now that we have dipped into the expectation of work-life balance, spend some time discussing your district's calibrated interpretation and expected application. Pause the video and resume when you are ready. As we come to a close, it is important to reiterate that there are 6 critical attributes for Standard 6. Progressing through this module, a thorough review was completed only on critical attribute 1, and we minimally examined critical attribute 3. It is essential that additional time is allocated for an analysis of the remaining critical attributes within Standard 6, as well as the remaining standards. When you consider additional PSEL professional learning, think about strategic ways to extend today's module. Just as the KDE design team was intentional in focusing on Standard 6 in this module, intentionality is also encouraged for district and/or school professional learning plans. With PSEL being new, there is an expected learning curve for all 10 standards. However, feedback from the field regarding the urgent need for support around the teacher shortage issue pushed the KDE team to focus on Standard 6. Additionally, with the inclusion of work-life balance in Standard 6, there is a concept that has never been addressed in Kentucky Principal Standards before. So that also grounded the decision to focus on Standard 6 for the first deep dive into a PSEL standard. Clearly, there were multiple factors that contributed to the focus on Standard 6 for the first analytical review. As your district is planning learning to support PSEL implementation, intentionality should also be evidenced. Which standard necessitates prioritization in your district for deep learning? How do you know? What standard might be a driver for your district? What evidence might you have that indicates a PSEL professional learning need? How might the PSEL learning needs be varied for principals and assistant principals in your district? What action plan is in place to address the different professional learning needs? What personalized approaches might your district utilize to provide the necessary supports for principals and assistant principals to continuously grow and improve professionally? What job-embedded learning experiences will the district facilitate and support? Pause the video and use the provided questions to discuss PSEL professional learning options for your district. Resume the video when ready. Intentionality and focus are critical to mastery learning. Likewise, the structure of PSEL learning experiences is a decisive component of deep learning that translates to increased effectiveness. Whatever structure a district opts to use must be impactful. Is a half-day orientation training on the 10 PSEL standards the sole session that will positively impact school, student, and personal improvement? Is it realistic to expect those engaged in deep learning experiences are capable of processing the depth of the standards during a long day? What degree of impact is there when a training is provided and there is no follow-up or evidence of practice required? Granted, there may be some degree of impact with the one-and-done training structure that scratches the surface. However, our Kentucky educators, school, and students deserve more than a compliance-driven training model. One idea to consider is utilizing administrator PLCs over the course of the year to deconstruct PSEL. The power of administrators exploring standards together over an extended period of time allows for deep study and implementation and impact checks that build the capacity of school leaders to implement standards at high levels. The most monumental resource in your grasp is each other. Teaming approaches to analytically review standards is a pivotal strategy to build knowledge, skill, practice, and consensus. Therefore, districts are encouraged to use district teams that include membership from principals, assistant principals, superintendents, and other administrative leaders to engage in long-term PSEL study, as well as review and refinement of implementation efforts. These are merely suggestions to stimulate thinking around next steps to continue learning. The privilege of thinking and planning is in your realm of responsibilities. Lastly, 704 KAR 3:370 requires that the evaluation criteria and process used to evaluate principals and assistant principals be explained and discussed with the evaluatee no later than the end of the evaluatee's first 30 calendar days of reporting for employment each school year. As such, districts are charged with a mandate that requires training regarding evaluation standards for principals and assistant principals. How will your district fulfill the criteria training responsibility referenced in 704 KAR 3:370 to garner the biggest gain for time and energy invested? As the training time is mandated, why not make the most of the required time? Just like we want students to think critically about content and teachers to think critically about their craft, the same expectations should be in place for school leaders. They must study, think, plan, reflect, and refine their practice. Implementation of PSEL is required for the 2020-2021 school year. As such, for meaningful implementation, it is critical that all involved have comprehensive and shared understanding of the leadership standards. Because leadership is second only to classroom instruction among all school-related factors that contribute to what students learn at school, investment in leadership development is a valuable lever for continuous student and school improvement. The first and most critical step to building highly effective school leadership is ensuring a deep, conceptualized understanding of the standards used for evaluation and continuous growth and improvement. Therefore, you are encouraged to continue the process of analytically reviewing the professional standards for educational leaders. This slide highlights aspects of the process used in this module. If this process worked well for your district, feel free to utilize as you analyze the remaining standards. The choice of your process to review is completely a district decision. We hope that you found this module helpful and you continue engaging in calibrating conversations to support a deep understanding and readiness for implementation during the 2020-2021 school year. In closing, thank you for participating in Module 4. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to any KDE employee listed on this slide.